Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Troutdale Housing Project Committee. And at this time, we'd like to have roll call, please.
Yep. Commissioner Witten?
Here.
Commissioner Wydilla?
Will not be here this evening.
Commissioner Prickett?
Here.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Here.
Commissioner Glantz?
Present.
Commissioner Mamoni?
Present.
Pamela Camber? Mr. Ethan Stuckmeyer?
Here.
Mr. Kerry Sheldon?
Mr. Sheldon indicated he may be running a few minutes late.
Okay, Ms. Daniel Hadler? And representative from Mount Hood Realty. And Chair Staffordson.
Present. Okay, at this time, we would like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Damgan will lead us this evening.
Okay. Folks at home, you don't have to say it, you can just stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, we will take public comment on any non-agenda items, and it's awfully quiet here. And did anyone submit any written comments, or is anyone?
Not that staff is aware. Rainey, did we get anything today, or I don't believe we have?
Not from the public.
Okay. So with that, we will dive right into tonight's topic, and which is Housing Needs Analysis Update and Housing Strategy Work Session. Good news and bad news. Okay, you want to take it away,
Yes.
Ms. Farrell?
I can take it away if you guys would let me. Thank you for having me tonight, and thank you for being here, attending this meeting with us, and working on this project still. It's been a really good project to be on, and I hope we can get some productive results. So the housing project, we on the agenda for tonight. So we will be talking about the housing needs analysis update, a review of the comprehensive plan in housing, and how the housing needs analysis reflect the update that needs to be done on Goal 10 housing and policy housing strategy. And hopefully we will wrap up tonight with a timeline and kind of general comments about the future of the project. So House Bill 2003, as many of you have known, it requires Oregon's medium and large cities, including Troutdale, to look at the needs of their residents in housing and develop strategy to produce the housing needs. There are two documents that within our project that we've created. We worked with Eco Northwest, Beth Goodman and Margaret Raidman last year, and we produced the housing needs analysis and the housing production strategy, but we just refer it to the housing strategy. So our housing project started last year in May 2019. Since then, we presented to council in the winter of 2020, and they wanted to look at it a second time. And the second time that they looked at the housing needs analysis, that's when they adopted it on June 23rd, 2020. What is understood from us is that the adoption of the HNA means that Troutdale won't be required to do another HNA till 2028. And Ethan, if you're here, you can let me know if I got this right or wrong, but that's our understanding. Feel free to jump in with any correction that I may
No,
have.
yeah. Yeah, that's correct. That is correct.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. So the comprehensive plan goal 10 update in your packets, what we've done is we took a look at the housing needs analysis, which was adopted by council in June. And we looked at the data and we looked at some of the missing key information that we have in our existing comp plan and how that could be translated into our updated plan. So they include, as you guys may know, the current demographics, the change in housing supply in Troutdale, and also the significant changes that Troutdale has faced since 2011. So as I mentioned before, it includes the update on the forecast too for housing, the new policies, and also the inclusion of tables and figures from the HNA. In the previous comp plan example, we didn't really have much figures. I'm really happy to have this document to be able to include some of the key findings and the figures of the HNA. So what we've done is, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions. I will be happy to correct whatever questions you may have. In your packets, you should receive a simple markup of the new comprehensive plan goal 10. We had decided not to show you too much of the red line. I can provide you a copy of the red line through the screen share to really show that, but the red line was really, we really worked on it. So it almost seems clearer to provide you the clean copy first, and then we can show you the red lines and how we can work on that. So then there will be less confusion about what we've done. So I can go through the key changes now, and then I can show you an example of the red lines that I refer to. The big changes are the updates on the population numbers, on demographics, median income, and household size. So Troutdale faced an increase of growth from population based on the census data that we received and from the HNA that Eco Northwest provided. The addition to the demographic section of the Goal 10 housing is that Troutdale is becoming more ethnically diverse, with the Latinx population growing significantly from 5% to 14%. Troutdale seniors are also a big part of the demographics. They are aging in place, and the proportion has changed from 19 to 22%.
What defines a senior?
It's from 60 or older. It's based on the census data. It's exactly what the HNA identified. There is also, we included the population growth forecast and also figures and table to reflect this update on that section. Okay. Housing inventory, that section, we included the change in the rate of change between home ownership and also the change in diversity of housing supplies. As you may already know, that in a lot of our conversation is that we have introduced a lot more of multifamily dwelling units in Troutdale, and that's also the majority of applications and development applications. So back in our original comp plan, it shows that the majority of our housing is single family. But we're also facing kind of a trend toward less than that of the new construction, but more into the multifamily housing. And what we've added is a figure of Troutdale's housing mix compared to the region of Portland, and then the metro and Multnomah County. Future housing need, that was part of House Bill 2003 to identify the number of new dwelling units forecasted based on metro scope. The number of 720 dwelling units was the number that our HNA now has found. We very well know that that is on the conservative side, and we've actually been adding in the last few years about 300 or so units themselves. So we did include that comment into our comprehensive plan. What we've added is a note about cost burden for residents and including homeowners and renters. A lot of the conversation of cost burden is all about the renters, but they also include the homeowners. So we included that section. And then also the changing economy of Troutdale. At the time of the last review, Troutdale was, a majority of it was bedroom community. But now with Amazon and FedEx and just kind of the economic change within that Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park, it's really become an economic center and a lot of trucking activities in that site. So we put that section into our future housing need. The neighborhood density that we've updated include more detailed information about the residential designation, which wasn't provided in detail in the current comp plan. And it also included commercial, because we know that with the new town center plan and with a lot of the new developments, there's more demand for housing in our town center and also in our commercial section. We also added a figure of allocation that needed for the housing type and its plan designation and the calculation that Eco Northwest provided. We updated the buildable lands inventory and to show the current capacity to meet about 1,090 new dwelling units. And we also added the figure of capacity of existing residential land and demand for dwelling units. I kind of breezed through that faster than I thought I would. So if you have any questions, please let me know so far.
Any questions for staff?
Okay, let me, would you guys be interested in seeing the red lines of the comp plan? Okay, give me a second. Let me just unshare my screen.
Mr. Chair, I believe Ms. Cambor joined the meeting too. So, hi, Pam.
Good evening, Pamela.
Sorry, I was coming off of another Zoom meeting and I had to wait for my computer to download the recording that we made of it. So technology.
Oh yeah, it's the line of 2020, isn't it? Coming off another call. Marini, not sure if you're talking, but your mic is off or muted.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was saying how it's nice to have you here, Pamela. And this is a section, this is the red line version of the comp plan that we discussed about. So as you can see, we have added the housing needs analysis that the project that we've done last year into this section, updated some of the, we feel that some of the information about Troutdale and the feel of it is still very much the same, and how we want to have a safe, healthy, and also small town feel. The demographics is what I had mentioned a lot about updating that and including the figures from the H&A, including population change, about the diversity of Troutdale and the change of population. Another figure
Hey,
about
Arini, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could zoom in just a little bit, a little hard to see, a little tiny.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Is that better?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, my screen is huge, so I didn't see what you guys see. Thanks for letting me know. Some of the figures of the income, household income. The section about the current housing inventory, and as I mentioned, it includes the change in Troutdale, the current status of Troutdale, Multnomah County, and Portland, and also the percentage of and the number of dwelling units is updated here. Home ownership information and the owner occupied and renter occupied within Troutdale. the housing need, which was, a lot of it was done based on the Metroscope projection, 720. And we did make a comment that we are on track to surpass this this projected need with about 372 units under construction between 2018 and 2020 alone. Some of the economic changes and also the demographic plans.
Can you hold there just for a second?
Yep.
I see we took out a bunch on trying to get ownership. Is that reflected anyplace else? Stronger emphasis on new ownership units.
You mean this section, the second
Yes.
paragraph, the third
Yeah.
paragraph?
Where it talks about, allowing for home ownership and single family.
I think that was just because we saw that there was a change in that in our current status, but we can add that, we can put that in if you like.
I think we should encourage home ownership, and I think that value is something most of our community would agree with.
Okay.
One thing to add about that, though, I would add too, is that type of statement normally would be found in a policy declaration, not necessarily in a observational section, which what this is. This is basically a report on what it is. So if there is a desire to encourage home ownership, that should be reflected in a policy or goal that you put within the plan. So that's one of the other reasons why.
Okay, so you want it out of here and then put in the goal?
Well, you're making effectively an opinionated statement, and not that we disagree or agree with it, but that is more leaning toward policy at that point, and that we do have a second section later on, and that can be embellished down there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
There is we did make a note that homeownership did go down in Troutdale. So homeownership has this decrease in Troutdale, and I think that would tie in with the policy if we add that into a new policy in the comp plan.
Okay, I think it should be in there someplace.
Yeah. If we'd like to put in the policy, we can do that, and we can do that here under this section of the home ownership section too.
Well, you would rather see it written in as a policy?
Something like that, if the city wants to promote home ownership, that is a policy. That is a potential policy or a goal that you can create a strategy for. That's really what the housing strategy component of it. So when we're talking about this particular section in the goal, you're reflecting what is on the ground right now, what the reports have indicated, without getting into that level of detail. You're basically saying the home ownership rate has decreased. That's a fact. That's a factual observation that's been recorded through census information and other information gathered. That's basically saying, here's the ground conditions at the moment. That second part of the goal, which we're going to be turning to here in the second half of this presentation overall, talks then about what are the policies, what is the direction that this comp plan should be encouraging, and by the comp plan encouraging it, how do you encourage it through development code updates, or how do you encourage it through city policy, or whatever it might be. That's the section where you want to put it.
You get there to a point and it becomes kind of a slippery slope.
In what way, I'm sorry?
When we start saying, okay, these are the policies, then they become projects.
Potentially.
Yeah. And we just have to be careful, and if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that we have a plan for it. Okay.
Okay, the section about neighborhood density, we didn't change too much about that, but we did update it with a figure that was provided, reflect how the 720 would fall into kind of that density discussion. The other thing that was mentioned in the previous presentation is that the existing comp plan doesn't have too much about what density residential, medium density, or high density is really broken into, and the HNA from Eco Northwest provided us that, so we included that into this section of the comp plan. There is an update about the land use regulations to allow access and attached single-family dwellings in all residential units except for R20. At the time before that, it wasn't allowed in all of residential zones. It was a little bit more limited, so there was an update to that. And then manufactured homes and parks are permitted too.
Rini, can you go back to Rini, can you go back to the previous section right above that, please? Just so we're all clear, and I want to make sure both the Planning Commission, some of the newer members, and the Housing Committee understand these low density, medium density, high density commercial designations. These come directly from the comprehensive plan land use map. So again, Troutdale is what we call a two-map community. We have a zoning district map, but that map has to basically talk with this larger, similarly colored map called the comp plan land use map, or the comprehensive land use plan map. So those are broad-based categories. Now, when we're seeing commercial in there, commercial includes, in many cases, mixed-use development. So like, for instance, the downtown townhomes that you see as part of that discovery block, while they are residential ultimately in land use, they are actually designated as commercial land uses. It's kind of peculiar, but that's one of the reasons why we are having commercial be put in there, because these mixed-use type environments, particularly in the town center area, will have that designation. Troutdale doesn't have a mixed-use land use designation. It does have certain mixed-use zoning districts, so there's an important distinction to make. So in case you were wondering why you saw commercial in there, that's why. It comes from the map and from the general land use categories that we have established elsewhere.
Thank you, Chris. So this is also the kind of the figure that shows the allocation that Eco Northwest did, and we included this section also. The buildable inventory, we updated the information based on the HNA, and we also included this table to show the capacity and the land and how it reflects in the land use designation. The last section of the comprehensive plan is the housing policies. There are about 8 policies, 8 main overall policy topics that we feel the strategy can fit within. There are some kind of just updates on that, right?
Well, just as a reminder, again, these are housing policies that are what you see in black is already what is in your current comp plan. So this is not a major reinvention of the wheel here. These are, again, the policy section in there. I guess my question to you, Rini, did you want to go back to the PowerPoint for this, or did you want to stay on the red line for that?
Yeah, I just want to introduce this right now as the red line document, and then we can go delve more into the policies and how they could fit into that. Because the PowerPoint doesn't really show how it fits into the whole comp plan. So the ones that are in red are basically policies that we have found in the strategies and how it can fit. So, provide opportunities for development of housing affordable to all income levels under, section 2. And then identify funding sources to support development of infrastructure and housing affordability programs. So, and then these are the last two sections. So the other thing that you guys mentioned was about the encouragement of home ownership. Would you like to include that in one of these categories right now, tonight? I feel it might fall into the category of attitude for encouraging home ownership.
I'd like
Probably
to.
value attitude, I would say.
We didn't capture that, Mr. Chair. Say
I would say it falls more in a value than attitude.
I don't believe we have value necessarily. There is neighborhood character. But I'm not sure if that.
Well, that could be maybe amended to say values and attitudes, or attitudes and values.
I would say values is more
Yeah.
appropriate. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I like values.
I like values better than attitudes.
Okay.
Do we have an attitude problem?
You too?
Oh.
Well, that, you might say we could have an attitude problem.
I had a question for Eco Northwest regarding home ownership trends. Since we've shown a decline in percentage of home ownership in Troutdale, is that a nationwide or statewide, or is that just a trend in general, or is there something peculiar about Troutdale? One thing I'm thinking is, regarding home ownership, people don't work for the same company for 30 years anymore. So there's a lot more, moving around, relocating going on. So you might not want to buy if you're only going to be in a location for 2 or 3 or 4 years.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure about how to answer that. We don't have Beth or Margaret here with us to tell you about the trends. But
Oregon, I can answer that. I've got a statistic here pulled up. Oregon has generally held steady compared to other states. There has been a general trend nationwide of increase of rental, but in some years actually, Portland or the Portland region, I'm looking at an article from last year, shows, and I'm just reading here, new numbers from the Census Bureau's American Community Survey shows the region's home ownership rose to an estimated 61% in 2015, a jump from what was estimated. And back in 2013, it was roughly around 53%. So regionally, we've seen actually an increase in some areas, but a lot of that, keep in mind, is driven by Washington County and Hillsborough in particular. So I don't know if we have a granular down. We can try to find out before the end of the meeting how Multnomah County or how East County fares there, but a lot of that has to do probably with new construction out in the west part of the metro and potentially also Happy Valley as well.
With home ownership. Well, and especially with our topography and transit situation, we're probably going to have more home ownership. Proportionately to some other communities.
Right. We'll see if we can find some more granular data for you, Mr. Wilcox, by the time we adjourn this evening.
Thanks, Chris, that helps.
Sure.
The other thing, where are we addressing the shortage on the higher end?
We don't have that in the section the way that it was laid out here. We can certainly add to our comp plan.
We do talk about there is a general statement under that value section, I guess we're calling it now, with regard to housing for all incomes. So it's not, there's no specific call out for that, but it definitely, that's what it means.
Right.
Yeah,
I just would
because
imagine the council is going to be looking for that.
I would say in response though too, the housing needs analysis that they approved in June very much states that. It had that one graph that we all are familiar with that showed the need at both ends of the income spectrum.
Right. But I still think some of that should translate into this document.
And that might be appropriate. I mean, that's the other thing too, is if there are graphs or charts or anything, other figures from that housing needs analysis that may be worthwhile inserting here, that's fine. If that's where you're going with that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because the way that the comp plan was laid out, it doesn't necessarily call out affordable housing and that type of housing. It breaks down into the type of the building itself, the structure. So if it's multifamily, single family, duplexes, or attached, the way that it's been written. But if you like to add a section on that to capture more of that, because we did mention about the rent burden and the home ownership on that too. It's just we don't have that format into the count of affordable housing and then what is the higher amenity housing cap.
Yeah, it's a good point to kind of underscore here too, Irene, because you know, this document, keep in mind, the comprehensive land use plan document informs mostly land use-based decisions, right? And land use-based decisions look really at the building typologies allowed, whether size or scope. While certainly affordability is peppered throughout, really the housing needs analysis document, which again was separately produced and separately approved by City Council, talks more about the policy of housing affordability at all income types, frankly. And while the goal 10, which is what you're looking at tonight, really talks about the actual use of the land and what type of housing stock should be allowed, not necessarily making a one-for-one match on, you know, you must accommodate for this income type of housing or that income type of housing. It's more to do with the built environment and your availability through the buildable lands inventory, if that makes sense.
What about under values, if we have something like recognize that a housing balance includes, I don't know, something about, you know, larger lot sizes. I'm trying to not frame it if you don't want to have like affordable and there's another word besides upper income that's been in some of the reports. Executive housing was?
Executive.
Or full, something about recognize the need for full spectrum housing, which includes both lower and upper ends. I don't know.
I think there was higher amenity housing was another term that was used at the at the meetings that we have.
I guess what I'd like to have something in here to protect so that when someone comes in and they have a whole bunch of R10s, they don't, you know, want to have everything converted into R5s. I mean, we seem to see that where land zoned one way and it ends up another. So somewhere I think there should be a value statement that says we recognize that, you know, all housing types are needed and call out that that includes high amenity or executive, however you want to say it. Because when I hear that, you know, we need to have a balance, I think the thought process goes to, well, we need to have affordable. I don't think anybody thinks that, oh yeah, we need to also, you know, protect some of the land we have for nicer housing.
would you like to introduce? So in the beginning of the document, it does still mention about the vision of Troutdale as more of that small city and natural areas with spacious environments valued by the community. So would you like to kind of take
well,
some of this into the policy, into going into more detail about that higher amenity housing?
Well, I see in that the last part of that first paragraph where we talk about a diversity of housing types, maybe
Mhm.
that's where we actually make the call out. That, you know, we recognize a diversity of housing types not only includes, and not here, but just kind of take that line.
Not only includes affordable housing, but high amenity housing as
Yes.
well.
I wouldn't put it in here. I'd just take that line about we recognize a diversity of housing types, which includes.
All right, I know this is giving you guys a headache.
I'm okay.
I'm trying to scroll down as fast as I can. So maybe just putting this here. This is a sentence that you wanted to build off.
I would start
Provided that
recognize a diversity. So I'd take out that first. Yeah, okay. Go ahead and put recognize. A diversity of housing types and locations includes.
including
So recognize diversity in housing types.
Yeah, let's go, there you go.
There you go. And I wouldn't say including, I'd say includes. Because that's very
We
specific
need
that
to
way.
say and locations there. I'm not sure.
Well, to me, locations, the types, I mean, we can have high amenity condos and we can have, to me, when I think of locations, I think of both, I think of zoning and lot size. So you can have high amenity that's, you know, on an R10 or an R20, and you can have high amenity that's on an A2 in a condo.
very nice diversity
Okay.
in location.
We need locations for that. But
Is there a better word? Housing types and sizes.
Sorry, I don't want to jump in here, but sometimes we talk about housing in terms of choice. You could say housing types and choice, potentially, which would increase, include location and, different, multifamily, large lot, single family, all that kind of stuff.
Perfect.
choices,
Yeah.
housing types at choices, plural, including.
Mm-hmm.
Including high, there you go, there, that works.
Including high amenity housing.
There you go.
Amenity to call URA.
Sweet and simple. Love it.
Okay.
Cool.
That's good.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay with that?
So it falls better. Okay.
Can you stop right there, Irene, on number 5? This is a legacy one. It's not anything that's been redlined, but one thing for the Planning Commission to see, look at item B there on the bottom there. Schedule Planning Commission meetings twice a month when necessary if the developer can provide answers within that period. I think you guys have generally been good at that, but that's just a reminder that that's one of the things that was established about 9 years ago. Are you generally okay with keeping it in there?
What if we
So
put
it doesn't directly.
What if what?
we put in as needed,
instead of when necessary.
or just
Well,
when,
it's kind of the
even
same
just,
thing. Yeah, when necessary in there.
Okay.
and then remove the twice a month? Do we
No,
need
because
that
if you
in
were
there?
increasing them, if you increased them at all, you'd be twice a month.
Right?
So basically, it's saying that when necessary, we would have 2 meetings a month.
Okay,
Like this month.
Yeah, which we've done in the past.
yep, okay.
Sometimes I think it's also referring to when, like a big project that we just did, maybe like FedEx, and they have changes that they have to do, and you, as a planning commissioner, doesn't want to make a decision yet, but there you're waiting on some clarification. I think that captures that flexibility.
And that's kind of a builder-friendly statement.
So this part, these 2 sentences are really similar to each other. This just gets into more of the detail of the 20-year plan, services, and need. Whereas this one is just a general statement about that.
We have very few areas where extensions would be necessary, though. Right?
Extensions of what, I'm sorry?
Of infrastructure.
Yeah, not a whole lot.
Yeah. Only one I can think of is Troutdale Road.
Could I, Mr. Chair, could I ask a question for clarification to the staff? And this is just asking a little bit of clarification. I'm looking at your section on policy. The section is 6 and I, bullet I. Yeah, the language says allow a mix of housing type as a part of a plan development. And I was wondering if the vision that you had was in the, and I'm asking because I need some clarification. If the vision that you had when you wrote a mix of housing types is a mix of architecturally speaking, or you were going farther than that. You were thinking about mixed income housing on the legacy of David Rust in Albuquerque, New Mexico in the early 70s. Are we talking about architectural typology, or are we talking really integrated urban fabric with mixed income housing? That's the first question.
What section
So
are you?
typically,
I'm sorry?
What section?
it was
I.
6I.
Section 6, alternative housing types, and I, allow a mix of housing type as a part of plan development. So the question was, what were you thinking there? It's just
Right.
types, or?
So
I
usually
think
with most,
I think Tanny was responding to that. Rennie, sorry.
yeah. So with most of the planned developments, it's a mix of types. So in other words, there's usually some A2 apartments, and there may be some detached, attached. Then there's some single-family homes. And then we usually have some duplexes and possibly row houses.
We have a mixed community where I live, where the commercial's on the outside on the major collector. And then we have duplexes and single-family attached housing. And then we have a multi-zone where it ranges from R7 to R10. So it's like a mix of every type, other than we don't have apartments in our planned development. It was planned like back in the 70s.
Mhm.
I'm not quite clear yet. I mean, I understand there is a wide spectrum of architectural typology, single family, duplexes, maybe apartment. But the question, maybe I didn't do a good job about asking, is like for point F, recognize single family attached home as legitimate as desirable as alternative to single family detached. Is there a is this a statement just for a statement, or is there a correlation, a financial correlation, a financial about affordability and area median income? Are we related to the diverse typology just for the sake of diverse typology, or we are really talking a pure mixed income housing in the tradition of David Drass, the mayor of Albuquerque, New Mexico, where really we are taking into consideration also financial situation. We are talking about affordability, no more than 1/3 of your salary for rent. Is there a correlation? Is there part of the policy that eventually is going to develop at point, or we are just talking about different typology of architecture?
The third of your salary would not be a criteria that would be set on a planned development, typically.
I'm not quite sure I understand your answer. We are talking about that roughly 40% of the people in Troutdale are below the affordability level. They spend more than 1/3 of their income on housing. And then we make a policy where we talk about allow a mix of types. And so the question comes natural to me, is this just for a difference of standard or style that still are in $1 million, or there is really a programmatic, systematic program that tried also to overcome this discrepancy of people that cannot afford home. 40% of the population is spending more than 1/3 of their income in housing, and it's growing potentially. Then it seems to me there is an opportunity here to go above and beyond just having different architectural style in a development. And so we go back really to the theory of what it was done in the early 70s with mixed income housing and affordable housing like we were doing in Ohio. But this is a question. That's why I want to show clarification. If there was just a statement or there is a correlation for financial program.
I don't see any correlation to financial. I view a planned development as a way for a developer to come in and say, I see I've got this huge section of, R10s, but I want to split it out. And it makes sense to make, A2s or R4s along a major arterial. That makes sense for everybody, but you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. And a planned development allows you to have, like a community, like Cherry Park is a planned development where they have both retail, they have apartments, they have R10s, they have R7s, and it's mixed together very well and with a good thought in the background. It doesn't have anything to do with affordability. It's a way to make
in that
better
particular
use
case,
of the land.
And in the Cherry Park example, that's actually an interesting one, because I think that does talk to Mr. Mamone's question, because the multifamily that is in Cherry Park is income restricted.
Mm-hmm. But that was their choice.
Right, but I think, and again, one thing I do want to remind the commission here is that this is, because again, it's not redlined here, this is a goal in the existing comp plan. And the way it reads, or the way staff has always understood it to mean, it was strictly looking at it through a typology lens. Mr. Mamone, I do think does bring up a point, though, that given the housing challenges we see, given the information we have about rent burden things, does the city have to therefore create a cleaner policy statement similar in type, basically where it ties affordability with typology, this may not be the necessary section where you would want to make that connection, but maybe that's part of a policy addition if it's not sufficiently addressed elsewhere right now in the draft that you see.
I know at one point we talked about wanting to put in something promoting planned developments because they seem to offer the best of both worlds. And I know when we talked about that with the project of apartments that went in across from Safeway, they didn't want to do it because it wasn't profitable. But no, I think it's a great way to blend different types of housing. I wish we had more planned developments. It just makes sense.
For a planned development?
Yeah, I mean, because you've always got stuff that's going to be along a main road somewhere, at least with large, property tracts. And it makes sense to put different types of housing closer to where someday maybe we'll have public transportation.
And I would say with Eagle Ridge, which is the one you were talking about.
That's right.
That one really didn't come in as a planned development because it was one type.
Right.
So there really wasn't anywhere to go with it.
It's just they were changing the type. Because those were originally, what, R4s or R5s before it got changed to R2?
They changed the zoning district, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They changed the zoning,
Right.
but they didn't change, they went with one type, inside
Right.
the development.
Hey everyone, I wonder if I could just jump in here real quick. This is Ethan.
Certainly.
So typically in a planned unit development, the affordability of those units isn't really taken into consideration. It is, like Chris has mentioned, just a typology type of plan. I don't know, Pamela, if I don't want to put you on the spot here, but if I don't know if affordable housing developers really use planned unit developments, if at all. But yeah, typically it's a developer who's saying, I'm going to provide this amount of mix of housing types by typology, single family apartments, duplexes, so on and so forth, in this configuration, and develop a larger site. And but the affordability is not really taken into account as part of that.
So I can give an example of New Columbia that was a 85-acre major redevelopment, and it includes for sale, market rate, single family homes. It includes Habitat and Community Development Corporation, very affordable home ownership. And it has, I believe, 850, if I'm remembering the numbers right, of affordable rental housing, so apartment buildings of all different kinds of layouts. So that is all, it was basically a planned unit development. We didn't go through a City of Portland process to call it that, but that's essentially what it is.
Thanks. Yeah, I stand
That's what I-
corrected, and it feels like it's few and far between.
Okay. So did that answer your question, Mr. Ramone?
I think so. If I understand correctly from Chris, this was just part of a language that didn't want to address at that specific moment, the affordability issue. But to me, I think it's relevant. I think the city should be the steward and the ambassador of the situation. Again, I've been working long enough, and so have you, that at times, developers have different perspective, they have different lens than investors. So I think we as city representatives, as an ambassador, steward of what is good for the city at large, should have foresight. And I think it would be disingenuous today to start to believe that we are not to have to address at times. Maybe this is not exactly the place in this alternative housing types policy. Maybe the stuff was going a different direction, but I think there is a missed opportunity if you don't seriously consider that. Because we know the tendency, we know the trajectory not just in the city, and the number that the staff gave us before with 40% that cannot afford it is scary, but it would be disingenuous to disregard the fact that if it's happening in Gresham, if it's happening in Fairview, if it's happening in Portland, it's not going to even increase in Troutdale. So I think it is our responsibility to start looking in that direction to try to find alternative. But I understand exactly now what was the intent of this language on section 6. Thank you very much.
You bet. And I would say, you know, our job really is to give staff the tools that they need.
Well, but it's also tools for this commission and ultimately for council. Because keep in mind, this section, whenever you're going to be looking or considering a major residential project, or you're going to consider a zoning change, you have to refer back to this goal when you're addressing whether or not it passes the smell test. So yes, it's nice for staff to have this tool, but at the same rate, you guys have to put on a straight face and say, does this hit the criteria of goal 10? So this is a really important discussion. I mean, and certainly you're going to have, this is kind of a work session setting, and ultimately it'll be before a hearing. So now's really the time to really think aloud and make sure you're covering your bases on it, because one day you will have to refer back to that section and remember this night in August when you were having that discussion.
Okay, with that lens, that what's on the screen right now, that E about high amenity housing. What if we say high amenity executive housing? Because I can see someone coming in saying, I'm building apartments and I've got marble countertops. And I don't think that's what we mean.
Sandy, when you originally proposed that language, I think you, or someone said, it made it a bit more inclusive, and I think someone said, including a range of housing types from affordable to high amenity executive housing. I think that helps to make it not so in your face that Troutdale just wants high-end housing. So I think the original statement was a little bit broader.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
So Pamela, if we do go back to that original statement, would you mind reminding me or guiding me in how we include that
Okay.
into this?
So I think it was go including a range of housing types, or a range of housing from affordable to
High amenity executive housing.
right. There you go.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll save this before gone. Are there any more comments about the policies? We will dive into more of the policies too, into some of the action plan that we talked about in the strategy. But these are the sections of the existing comp plan.
Yeah, Rainey, go back a little bit.
Up.
Yeah. 4.
Go back to section 4.
Yeah. 4D was the one I had a
4D.
question on. There you go. Identify funding sources to support. I don't know if identify is the best way to word that.
This was one of the recommendation from the strategy. one of the overarching policy recommendation from the strategy that we included in here.
Okay,
Is the word identify the one throwing you off?
yeah, a little bit. I was just thinking maybe like explore. Identify means it's there. You guys okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay. I think we're good. Okay, so we have a 20-year supply of land, right?
Yep.
And we get to 2030. Is it still a 20-year supply, or is it now a 10-year supply?
No, it's a 20, well, it gets determined when you next do your housing needs analysis, which will not come till 2028.
Okay.
So at that point, it would reset.
Okay.
You just have to perpetuate, when you're doing these things, you're doing your BLI, your buildable lands inventory simultaneously, and you would ensure that supply.
So, hey everyone, this is Ethan. I am not a resident of Troutdale, so I won't try to get too involved in your policies and your city vision. But I'm just curious about if the committee members are interested in saying something specific about middle housing, knowing that House Bill 2001 has passed. There's this alternative housing type section here. I noticed that it talks a little bit about single-family attached homes, but doesn't go as far as saying things like triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters. Just curious if people, taking the temperature on that.
Are you referring to this section right here, F, Ethan?
That's correct. Or yeah, yes, correct. F.
It could also, there's also the multiple family dwellings. Usually that would refer a lot about apartments, but middle housing does fall into that too, can fall into that, or zero lot line.
We also have section 6 that's entirely on alternative housing types, the whole thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's what I'm referring to. Is there any interest in being specific about middle housing? If there's not, I was just asking a question.
I think from a staff perspective, it's probably wise to do that because it acknowledges the more contemporary language that is applied to this type of housing. And it, specifically harkens to House Bill 2001 as far as, the city being able to respond to it. This is not just, window dressing. This is something that actively has occurred. The city has already encouraged and approved middle family housing typologies in the past 2 years. So it's really an endorsement of what's been done, as well as, a comfort level that in certain areas of the city, it makes a lot of sense.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Glantz, go ahead.
As I was gonna say, I like including it in the headline.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's relevant to introduce something like that. There is no hurt. And also, I just recently attended a field trip and a seminar from the City of Portland, the Institute of Sustainable Solution of Portland State University. So the middle housing, the infield is becoming more relevant. And again, there is really no problem about introducing at least a language like this, identify very clearly a strategy that might or might not be necessarily completely implemented in the city, but I don't see any value, so I agree with my colleague.
Would you like to still include alternative? So it's alternative and
I guess-
middle housing, just
I guess
middle
my
housing.
question is, by putting middle housing in there, do we really call it out and identify it? Would it be better to have a paragraph in here? Or something that says we recognize that?
I think you're better off with a paragraph. I mean, it's fine to put it in the title, but a paragraph is an endorsement or an acknowledgement
Right.
that you are actively planning for it, which, by the way, you're required to by law.
Right.
Yeah, I would say
You guys-
adding its own section would, its own sentence or paragraph would be really strong too, in addition to having it in the title too.
So what if we took it out of the heading and put that we recognize it as
We can wordsmith something together for.
a need?
I think if we take it out of the headline, then it looks like it's alternative, and it's really not, it's mainstream. So by saying alternative and middle housing types, we're saying we recognize there's a lot of different things we can do, and that, you know, calling out middle housing.
I guess one question, this is a larger macro question for the group, because I'm led to believe the reason it was called alternative housing types was back in 2011 when the periodic review for this goal occurred, was expanding it to all housing types beyond just single family. So maybe the word alternative should be dropped, and maybe it's diversity of housing types or additional housing types. Maybe it's the adjective or descriptor just needs to change, and then you don't have to worry about adding it into the headline. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, I would say maybe additional housing types. You know, in here, we're talking about planned developments, we're talking about,
Condominiums.
yeah, lower income. I mean, it's a lot of policy.
I mean, I'll throw out housing choice again. I think that
Housing
captures lots of it. But.
Yeah. I do want to add
There you
to
go.
when this was written, this kind of showed the progress that Troutdale has also made in achieving some of the goals that we have, because this alternative housing and recognizing all these different types of housing instead of a single family housing, there has been a shift of that attached housing in Troutdale too now than it was in 2011, at least from the data that I see. So focusing so much of from single family to single family lots like that, it's reflective of the time that it was written, and maybe changing that, it would be suitable for us. So we don't just focus in an alternative to single family housing. Today, it is an accepted form of housing in Troutdale, middle housing.
Okay.
Is there any suggestion on how we would want to include middle housing, specific middle housing verbiage into this?
You got the word recognize in each of the 5 ones after that, so maybe you start with recognize.
Right.
Mhm.
Recognize the need for middle housing. A variety of middle housing options.
Well, there you go. Succinct.
I don't mean to split hair here, but because we're talking about alternative housing, and we should, of course, we agree we're going to remove middle from the title. Recognize the need for a variety seems to me go far, go overreaches. in some respect, that just saying, we offer you a spectrum of possibility, you pick. Here we are, it seems we are, and I don't mean it that way, but almost presumptuous in recognize already that there is a need for middle housing. I don't think that was my intent for sure. I don't know if it was the intent of the other commissioner. The intent was to me that middle housing by itself to be recognized as a potential alternative for housing. But here I think we overreach because we already imply there is a need for it. Now we're going the other extreme. First we didn't have it, and now we go the other extreme, where we imply there is a need for it. And so this might be pushing it too much. This is my stance, of course.
It should say.
So, well, again, I don't know if you recognize that middle housing might be a good alternative or something in that matter. I don't pretend, again, semantics as the point is irrelevant in this situation. I want to split out. We're not going to find the perfect wording, but the need for a variety of it really means that we made an analysis and we are sure that there is a void. I don't know if we've done that, but I think we should, as was suggested before, say that we want to identify also middle housing as a potential solution, as an alternative.
Right, and I guess where I was going with the variety is middle housing could be, it could be detached, attached, cottage cluster, it could be a lot of things. And I'm just trying to say, we're open to a variety of it.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chair, my concern was not variety, my concern was the need. The need implies that we made an assessment. And so that is my concern. That is, I think, is overreaching. But that's my sense.
I agree with Mr. Manones. I don't like the word need in there.
How about a suggestion of recognize middle housing provides a variety of housing options? Something.
There you go. Alternative option now.
Okay.
Very good. Very good.
Options. Sorry.
And are we going to remove it from the title?
I think the title kind of needs a total rework.
Okay.
Pamela, you're on a roll. You're on a roll with these ideas, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot that you have anything.
What about diverse housing choices?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I was going to suggest just housing choice, but that works too.
There is, unless I'm missing it, there's one additional wrinkle to throw in this section. It may require its own paragraph. And that also comes from state legislation, and that is accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's been addressed. I don't think it is addressed in there, but that is also something that came down from the state, but also admittedly is a type of housing choice. I'm not sure if we put it in there or not.
We don't currently have it, but we can put it right here under manufactured home.
So I wonder if you could do this all within one paragraph under, and I think F provides the best opportunity there, where you say recognize single family attached, comma, middle housing, comma, and ADUs as legitimate and desirable alternatives to single family detached homes. Just, you know, you don't have to have a separate line item for both middle housing, ADUs, single family attached, so on and so forth. Kind of all captured and within there. Another, just again, suggestion.
And ADUs. There you go.
Okay.
Then somewhere, don't you have to provide a actual definition of middle housing?
We don't have to provide
I mean,
that here.
It's defined in state statute.
It could also be defined in maybe some of those predecessing pages too, as far as housing trends or things. Are you talking about, Mr. Wilcox, like just clarifying, like in parentheses, like duplexes, triplexes, quads, cottage clusters, is that kind of what you're referring to?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be thrown in there.
Mm-hmm. We could put that in there.
So would you like to include a description as a
Probably in
new
D.
line?
Or just maybe with D, because that's the first reference to middle housing in that overall section.
You could
Oh,
add
what,
to the end of D, you could say such as, and then list the types.
Yep.
A desirable alternative.
Sorry, Tanny, what did you say?
I'm just asking, you know, as a legitimate and desirable alternative to single-family detached homes.
That's what you wrote 9 years ago.
I know, are they desirable or are they an alternative?
I would just go with alternative. I think desirable is something we can't judge.
Right,
Right.
where I'm at too.
Yeah, just take desirable out.
Yeah, you could,
And the
As a
And the
legitimate?
word and, yeah. There you go.
beautiful. There's desirable again. Under G.
Although
really
I
like
kinda
it.
like, it's not quantifiable.
Keep
I
going.
would like plan developments just because we can get so much done with them. But that's
Well, it's,
opinion, not quantifiable.
is it attractive and desirable? A planned development as an alternative to providing just single type of housing in a subdivision.
Mix of housing types is part of it.
One thing about desirable, given that it is a qualitative adjective, in a comp plan, you can have a measure of that. You don't have to, it doesn't necessarily have to be a quantifiable standard here. Because here you're talking about the essence of what you're trying to accomplish.
I know.
Similar to
And
parts
really
of
that's-
desirable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we will keep that here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question I have for this group, when we're talking about housing rehabilitation, which we really haven't talked about a whole lot, it says particularly in the downtown area, but we are now seeing our first large-scale subdivisions that occurred outside of downtown Troutdale turn at least 50 years old this year. And frankly, some of those older homes, some of them have been well maintained, but a lot of them have not. And I would argue some of your bigger rehab projects are probably not even in the downtown area anymore. They are in some of your earliest, oldest subdivisions. Do you put even a geographic identifier there or stress particularly a downtown area?
I don't know how you take it on.
Why couldn't you put,
Wouldn't it really have to be up to the homeowners association? More than us?
well, is there, a lot of the
individual
older ones
homeowner.
don't have a homeowners associations. And if they did, they're long gone.
Mhm.
Because there used to be one up at, off of 242nd. That was a neighborhood association, and they had a central little park in the center area.
Oh, you're,
And
yeah, Wooddale.
yeah,
subdivision.
Wooddale was and they disbanded, and that was it.
Right.
So could we put something like deteriorated housing stock in?
What if we just
I
said,
guess,
pursue methods of improving and upgrading the quality of deteriorated housing stock,
Housing stock.
period?
Yeah, just stop there.
Yeah,
I'd add the upgrade, though. I like that word.
yeah.
So.
Well, they're gonna have to upgrade at some point because they don't meet the housing code, the building code either.
So pursue methods of upgrading and improving the quality.
yeah.
Yeah. Of upgrading and improving, yeah.
Mhm.
B's a tough
Shout it, Rennie. All caps it.
Yeah, please.
And we don't need that last part about in order to upgrade the total, yeah.
Yeah.
The methods of upgrading and improving the quality of deteriorated housing stock, period.
Yeah, because my neighborhood is almost 40 years old.
I think on B, you're gonna have to go to something like explore.
Okay.
I think there are ways to do it, it's just, if we wanna do
Is
it.
there anything such as easy, low-cost incentives?
I think of easy as it doesn't require a grant, someone to write a grant,
Okay,
individually as a homeowner, where it's you make one simple application and you get $500 towards new storm windows or something.
Would you like accessible instead?
No.
no, I think easy,
easy's
easy,
okay.
would- yeah. I just, yeah, that easy is probably be more understandable.
It's not easy, but it makes us look good, so we'll leave it in there.
I am somewhat, my apology, I'm somewhat uneasy with the word easy. I wonder if something, because in general, this is something that every municipality does. So explore a variety of programs and incentive that the city can offer to homeowners to repair and upgrade poor quality housing stock.
I don't care, either way.
Because that
Yeah,
is
it
the
has,
spectrum. Now we now by saying easy and low cost, that become the problem. And now all of us have a specific image about easy and low cost. And so you got to start to define also later on what's easy and low cost mean. While by making a wide spectrum, you know, explore programs and financial incentive that the city can offer to homeowners to repair and upgrade housing stock. I don't even know if I would use poor housing stock, because the fact we're improving it, and
Financial.
but
I go programs and incentives.
Okay.
This is also mentioned in the housing strategy too, just as a reminder.
Should high quality be hyphenated?
Yes.
Cool.
Okay, anything else to add?
What's that?
Anything else to add?
No.
Okay.
That actually puts us like exactly on schedule. That's scary.
That's really good.
Pretty good.
All right, now
Calendar.
we do have a break in the next meeting, in next part of the meeting. We're going to talk about the policies that we discussed just now and the priorities that you guys have worked on in December and how we could execute it as part of the action items that we have. So, Chris or Tammy, would you like to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, we'll just take a break and come back at 7:40.
7:40? Okay.
All right.
10 minutes?
Okay.
Okay,
Break
see you guys.
Okay.
Marie, I'm going to pause the recording too.
And we are going to continue with goal 10. Irini, this is you again. Where'd she go? There she is. You ready with goal 10 there, Irini? We lost her.
While we wait for Ms. Farrell, I can give you quickly a kind of a department update if you like.
Okay.
Just a couple of notes. Actually, on the topic of housing, while we're talking about it tonight, we have several housing projects. I think I mentioned to the Planning Commission last week, but for the other groups, we have gotten partial occupancy of the Eagle Ridge apartment homes. The construction of the Columbia Ridge subdivisions, detached single-family homes, is underway. The middle housing project, a townhome project, Lancaster Park, which was off Halsey, is about to be underway. So a lot of development interest and potential occurring. Also wanted to make mention, for those of you not involved with it, the town center plan is gradually getting to its conclusion as well too. There will probably be a draft here in the next few weeks that we'll probably want to circulate with you guys too, in case you have any comments or thoughts on that. I am expecting within the next 6 months, there's likely going to be a zoning district, both text amendment and map amendment to consider a new zoning district for the urban renewal area. But we'll give you some heads up as that comes along on that.
Okay.
Also, future calendar items for the Planning Commission. There will probably be a couple of hearings here in the next 2 months. Stay tuned. There may be a need, given the capacity of windows and partially based on the discussion tonight, to have maybe more than one meeting, either in October or November, or potentially both.
Do we have to?
Oh, well, it is in your comp plan, so I guess you might have to think about that. It looks like Ms. Farrell's Zoom just logged off. Can everyone else hear us okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll try to take over for just a little bit. Maybe she can reconnect. So give me one moment. I'll just have to pull the file up since she was the one screen sharing. So give me 1 minute. Are you guys seeing the full screen, or are you seeing kind of like a project screen with like a bigger screen and a little screen?
Bigger.
The project screen? Yeah.
Bigger and little.
Okay. Let me try one more. Technology is wonderful, isn't it?
What's that?
I said technology is wonderful, right? How about now? Can you all see the full screen?
There you go. Yep.
Okay. I don't know what button I pushed, but we'll run with it until we get into any more.
There she is.
Marini, are you back?
I'm back. I'm sorry. I don't really know what happened. It just kicked me out, and I was just don't know what to do. But yes, I'm back.
Okay. Well, I've got the
Uh,
presentation up. I don't mind cycling for you. So you just let me know when you want to go to your next slide. So.
Okay,
Here we
so we can look at the slide right now. These are the proposed policy that we had just talked about. 4 policy were the ones straight from the strategy. And from what Ethan had clarified to us, the policy are not really required to be adopted in the comprehensive plan. We just felt that it was a good place to put that. And it seems that you guys agree with that too. But just to clarify, it's not really a need that we have to do.
And on that second
So
one, you see there were, sorry, I was going to just make quick mention. We did make a quick change when we were in the red line version where it said identify. On that second one, that'll say explore funding sources now.
Okay.
I have that note over here. So I'll update the strategy and everything else that we have to reflect that. The next slide, please. So if you remember back in December, we had looked at the strategy that Eco Northwest had provided us. We had completed an exercise of identifying some of the action items within the policies and prioritizing which one is the most important to be completed within a year or 2 timeframe, and then 3 to 5, and then long term. So what also came out of some of the discussion that we had was also the creation of a housing information packet for probably prospective developers or just anyone who's interested in developing in Troutdale of housing and any kind of incentives or any homeowners that would be beneficial to them to know what is available here in the city and how we can help them. Because currently, right now, we don't really have any programs or incentives for homeowners to rehab their house or even for developers to build affordably too.
So when you say
So
a
the
packet, are you talking like a brochure, or are you talking like something's got the application and everything else in it?
I mean, this is kind of where we want to start the conversation too. What do we envision for the city to provide? We get pre-apps of apartment kind of developments, and sometimes they ask us about, what are the SDCs, some of that, and then what are some of the options to finance these SDCs. And I'm not trying to jump into SDC conversation right now, but just kind of an overall information of how to jump in Troutdale, or even as a homeowner, what you can do and what are the incentives. So it could be a brochure, something simple. It could also be kind of a few pages of packets and for resources, I guess that's the right word for that.
So just basic information that they don't
Yeah.
have now.
Because right now
Yeah.
we don't really have one right now. It's just based, if we have a pre-application, we just based on the code and what we know of that.
I think it'd be really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that make it more development friendly too, if we had something.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And it would really, know it's gonna be work for the staff, but it could pay off in terms of investment for the staff. So instead of, writing in the pre-apps specifically about development, we can just start the conversation first about what's available in Troutdale and what you can do in Troutdale. So that could help us in the long run as a department. So the next section is the high priorities that we did identify as the high priorities in Troutdale. So they include the under policy 2, which we had just discussed, is evaluating opportunities for senior housing, evaluating increased building heights of multifamily, support redevelopment in Troutdale, including higher density housing, and identifying policies to encourage higher quality building materials suitable to Troutdale's limit. Some of this section is something that, is there someone speaking, or maybe my back?
Might be your cat.
My cat. I don't have a cat. So something like evaluating the multifamily building URA and allowing a 55 foot tall, it might be included into the housing packet. We could identify it as what we would like to achieve when the URA gets into mixed use housing. So, and then something like higher quality building materials. We have been having discussions about climate adaptation and resiliency, and adopting that or adding that into that conversation of making sure that building materials are suitable for Troutdale's unique climate of winds and just the rainy weather that we have here too. Any questions about these priorities?
Carry on.
Okay, next please, Chris. Okay, policy 3. Right up opportunities for development of affordable to income levels. The Housing Committee has identified these policies to be a priority. So allowing for government subsidized low-income housing in areas within 1/4 mile of corridors and transit line. This could be achieved by development code amendment and continuing the practice of providing density bonuses that support the development of affordable. This is not something that we already have, I believe. We do already have density ways of developments to increase their density, but there isn't kind of a policy for affordable housing. Chris, just for affordable housing. We have ways to accommodate for density, but not for affordable housing specifically.
Yeah, this kind of touches on kind of maybe what some of Mr. Mamoni said before the break about maybe this idea of, you know, looking not only at the typology, but maybe at affordability and how maybe there is that connection there. So that could potentially blend his comment and figure that possibility out. So that might be an appropriate way of doing that. And again, these are suggestions that are nested within those policies.
So what about continue the practice of providing density bonuses and expand that to supporting density bonuses for affordable housing as well?
Sure.
Can we go back to the 3.1.c, the allow for government subsidized? The allow is an odd word because if it's zoned correctly, it's already allowed. So I'm wondering if it was meant to be encourage, because I think what you're wanting to do is encourage it along those transit lines. So just a clarification maybe on what the word allow was really getting at.
I think the staff recollection there was that was a word suggested by Eco Northwest, because the word encourage, I think, also suggested that it may have perhaps over-suggested Troutdale's council and their general feeling of it necessarily, and I think there was a concern that would not accurately reflect it. So there was probably a hunt for a word there that would basically recognize the fact that obviously if the zoning allows for it, it is allowed. I mean, that's factual. I don't think anybody can debate that. Right. But the word encourage, I think, suggested that it provided a level of maybe favoritism or endorsement for it. And historically, the community, no matter if it's affordable or market rate, has never really made that type of declaration before. So if there's another word that could be used that kind of speaks to the recognition that it is allowed, but without maybe the added concern of an endorsement, then I think we're all ears there.
What about recognize the need for?
Recognize the need for government subsidized low-income housing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the simple facts and
well, we know that.
Well, we also know it's allowed.
I agree. I think it should still be, I think it should stay allowed. Because for some reason, recognize means that we need to do something about it.
I mean, putting it along transit is really where it needs to go. And we know that there needs to be some. That should be kind of a priority if there's transit nearby. just because we don't have a lot of transit areas?
Yeah. I would probably just say allow has a better chance of passing, I think.
Okay.
It gets to council.
Okay. I think, if I'm understanding, I think the intent was to, in some ways, support the location of subsidized affordable housing along transit lines. But
Correct.
it's just an odd statement the way it is now, from my perspective, but I can live with it.
No, it is a little, I agree with you, it's a little odd. I just don't know that there's a better way to say it.
Okay.
Okay.
And
All
then
right, good there.
this
Okay, we'll,
this
3.2.
3.2.
Okay, so we want to continue, we don't want to stop doing what we're doing today, we want to enhance that. So we want to continue the practice of providing density bonuses, and we want to provide density bonuses for the development of affordable housing, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense for everyone?
You guys okay with that?
So you're saying continue the practice of providing density bonuses and the bonuses
And-
of affordable housing.
Right.
Yeah.
And provide density bonuses for the development of affordable housing.
Does that capture it correctly?
Yeah. That works.
Okay. I'm also, Chris, I'm also doing it on
Oh, you're
on the
editing
doc
it?
too.
Okay. Okay,
Just
great,
you
thank you.
can't see it.
Okay, I'll just continue presenting then, and I'll trust that you have it then, thank you.
Oh,
back
no,
to
you can still present it from you, and I'll just, yeah. And then
Okay.
I'll make the edit in the Word doc of the strategy instead,
Great,
so I don't
great,
forget
thank
it.
you.
Arini, could I interrupt a second?
Yes.
My apologies. I sometimes I'm a little bit slow about processing everything. I had to go back to 3.1c. And again, I'm willing to get along with everything you like. It's not a break in, but that allow, I agree with you, but is somewhat peculiar there, because allow, in what we're trying to do right now, introduce immediately the fact that it's not allowed, and we are making a move, we're making a push, so that government subsidized low-income housing will be allowed, will be introduced. We are pushing for having it there in that area. So I don't feel, and again, I'm willing to go along with whatever you like, because again, it's not a deal breaker, but allows, to me, if I read a policy like this, it means this is not allowed right now. The city is making a push to have this subsidized low-income housing in those areas. So if it's not right now, then the word is correct. We're pushing it because we think there is value. But if the code allows there already, depending upon the classification, depending upon the zoning district, depending upon proximity and logistics, then allowed is not what we're after. Maybe what we're after is really, what was the word that you used, Ms. Camber, again? We cannot hear you.
Encourage?
I was looking at encourage, but I understand that there had been some
Encourage, yes.
feeling that the council might not be willing to use that word, that it was too much of a being a proponent of low-income affordable housing. So,
but maybe we can introduce something when necessary. Then I must imagine, and again, I'm making an assumption, and we all know what we do when we assume. But when a development occurs, there is going to be way to assess, way to impose condition, ways, and so allow to me is clear. It's not allowed right now. And so the intent of this policy is to open the door. Is that the case? Is that the case?
Well, I guess I would say from a practical standpoint, for some people in leadership, probably not. And I think for some people, this is getting the door opened where it needs to be opened.
It's almost like the undercurrent of the way it's, to me, the way I read it is reluctantly allow for government. It's like, oh, okay, we have to accept it. It's already allowed, it's going to happen. So to me, it's a negative. It's not a push.
To me, it's a question of policy. What does the policy says right now? Does the policy right now allow, in any possible situation, even marginally, government subsidized low-income housing in area within 1/4 miles? If it does, then allow is not the word. If it does not, and that is the intent, because allow doesn't mean you open the floodgates. Allow means we're going to throw a level of scrutiny. But if the policy already does permit those kind of development, then allow is not the right word. What does the policy say, the current policy?
Okay, so maybe what you're looking for is something like continue the policy for government subsidized low-income housing?
Well, again, what you're talking about here is not so much a policy if you like it or not. The policy here talks about positioning it so it is in areas where transit service is nearby. That's the gist of it. So maybe the sentence needs to be flipped, perhaps, and stressed, because this is more a locational siting type concern rather than a qualitative judgment on government subsidized affordable housing. I do think Mr. Stuckmeyer, I saw on my screen, had his hand up, so I want to make sure that he gets a chance, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I didn't know the protocol, so I raised my hand just to throw my hat in the ring. But echoing Chris's point, this
Sorry,
is.
I can't see you, so, okay.
Oh yes, sorry. Echoing Chris's point, this says nothing about whether the city is interested in pursuing or encouraging government subsidized housing. What it is about is encouraging it within 1/4 mile of transit corridors. That's a locational policy rather than a housing type endorsement.
And I can see that, I know, and it makes sense to me. On the other end now, I changing my question. The question right now is there a policy right now at all that allows or not allows for government subsidized low-income housing in area within 1/4 miles of corridor within transit line? Because
No,
if it
there's
already
no-
exists, and even if we are not
No,
pushing it, that allow is not the right word. And I'm not suggesting we should open the floodgate. Now the question is about a policy. Is there a policy in our code that allows that or not?
There is a general policy, and it is within this comp plan in a different section that suggests when you have high density housing. Now, not all government subsidized affordable housing is high density, but there is at least somewhat tangential language where you have the encouragement of high density residential to be located near roads that are served by transit. I'm summarizing it. There's no distinct, unique policy as far as anything related to any sort of subsidized housing in connection with any sort of physical placement anywhere in the city, transit service or not. So probably, yeah, you're right. Allowed is still kind of a weird tone, and I see to Ms. Camber's concern that it may also be pseudo like a reluctant negative word too. But to Mr. Stuckmeyer's point, we're talking about a locational aspect here. So maybe it just needs a rewriting that acknowledges that through the prism of the overall policy.
Commissioner Whitman?
Yeah, it just seems like, I agree, allow is an odd word, and encourage goes too much the other way. Can't we find another word in the middle, such as support for government subsidized, rather than encourage or allow?
I think also if we might, again, switch the structure of the sentence and say something like, recognize the location of affordable housing is best recognize that affordable housing is best located within 1/4 mile of transit line. Just recognize that that's the best kind of location, because I think that's really what that was trying to get at.
Yeah.
What about this? What about locate government subsidized low-income housing in areas 1/4 mile of corridors with transit lines?
It goes too far the other way.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
may I emphasize the fact that maybe we go back on one extra step. The title of the policy is provide opportunities. And to me, that is not mandatory requirement, is offer an opportunity, a spectrum of opportunities. And so maybe the word is, because opportunity means there is a lot of possibility. We are not demanding that we do this. So maybe the word instead of allowed would be consider for going to subsidized low income areas, because the title is provide opportunity. Different opportunities, many opportunities. Some are going to be possible, some are in process of elimination. They're going to be not acceptable for whatever reason. So allow, again, is a matter of if we have a policy or not, maybe consider, because again, it falls under the language of provide opportunities. And so for consideration.
Okay.
Which
What
is very
about
vague, like
consider? Consider government subsidized low-income housing in areas within 1/4 mile of transit lines.
So,
Is that really different than allow? Because it's already, I mean, we'd have to consider it.
right. So that's
It's not, but I'm only going to do an hour on allow, and then we'll kind of move on.
Well, the crux of the issue is that government subsidized low-income housing is already allowed within the city, whether it's within 1/4 mile of a transit corridor or not. The issue is, are you going to try to encourage that to take place in a certain area within 1/4 mile of corridor? So I think encourage is actually the right word, because it's already allowed. You already allow it, you already consider it. If you're encouraging it within 1/4 mile, that says nothing about outside of 1/4 mile. You're just encouraging it within that 1/4 mile.
So encourage the location of government subsidized low-income housing in areas within 1/4 mile.
I think that's exactly what it's trying to say.
And by putting location up front, that kind of,
It becomes a siting question, and that is a benefit for the site that it is proximate to transit lines.
yeah.
So encourage the location for government subsidized low-income housing in areas within 1/4 mile of corridors with transit lines.
Okay, and here's one, if we think that encourage may throw up some red flags, what if we use the word prioritize the location of?
I can't go with prioritize.
Okay,
Again, it's not prioritizing government subsidized housing in the city. It's prioritizing it in a certain area that works best for that.
prioritizing the location of, yes. Encourage is fine too, just looking for options.
Encourage says you're going to help it along. Prioritize says you're really helping it along.
Okay. Cool, we'll leave it at the encourage the location.
Okay. All right. See if that one flies. Okay. Everybody good?
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. It does read better.
It does read better, yeah.
Okay, we at 3.3 now?
Yeah, it's not in order because of just the way that it was prioritized from the work session.
Okay.
So these two items, the last two items, that could be a possibility for our department to work to include in that resources packet. And the specific ideas of the grant program will obviously go to you, we'll bring that forward to you along with that document, but that was a way I think we can tackle that action item.
Right. Do you need this much detail in there for 3.3?
It's up to you. Let me just review the whole wording of the objective 3.3B.
Are you concerned that those numbers either could be dated or maybe there's?
Yeah, it just seems like we're just nailing it down a little bit. I think we get into and we say support rehabilitation projects. We could actually stop there, or we could define it as, you know, repairs and upgrades. But I don't know that we want to go down to the 2,000 to 10,000 and that type of thing. I just think that's a little more detail than we need.
This is policy. This is more of the priorities and the action and how
Right.
policy number 3 achieved. So going into detail is not it's not a burden. It's not going to create too much of an issue and limit the point of the action items, I think. But we can obviously.
I just always think of this as like the 20,000-foot view.
Mhm.
And then we take the things from the 20,000-foot view and then we detail them out to implement them. Am I thinking that incorrectly?
I mean, these are steps for.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, John Paul, I'm sorry.
Sorry, my apologies. Mr. Chair, I think I agree with the original statement that the last sentence is probably unnecessary, is actually overreaching in the sense we are putting ourselves in words, something we don't have to put. We don't know what the circumstances and how the circumstances are going to change in the next 10, 15 years, 5 years. So sometimes less is more. We already made it clear there is opportunity for grant. Specific design, specific project, specific development might demand a different strategy in the value of the grant. So why say more? We know we have allowed that, we allow grants program, and then depending upon the specifics, depending upon the vision of the council, also or the department, we approach it the way we have to, but not defining right now 2,000 to 10,000, even 20,000. Why do that? Let's allow ourselves the flexibility to do what we have to do in the right way when the situation occurs.
I would agree, and I'd also say, you know, when you get into a grant program, there'll be plenty of detail. So we'll get a chance to do the detail later, which might be better. Would that be okay if we stopped after rehabilitation projects, maybe? That'd be okay with staff?
I mean, it's fine. It's like, I think what Marini was saying though, this is not necessarily copy pasted into your code update. This is really a reflection of what your priorities were that were nested under the policy. That top line, again, policy would be going into there. So this is kind of a work plan of sorts once your goal 10 gets updated, that we would be focusing on these. So this is almost like reflective of it. So at some point when you do pass a housing strategy, you can make those edits at those times, but we can certainly take notes right now and do that.
Okay.
I think from the conversation that we had, though, the number to 2,000 and 10,000 was because we really want to target regular homeowners who just wants to update their house. So we can only take that out, but I think maybe something identifying into the details of, you know, roof repairs or sewer electrical system facade improvements would help us in developing that grant program, and we can go a little bit detailed, but this kind of give us a little more guidance about the kind of grants that we would be researching that's existing, or grant programs that how we would develop that too. So maybe not the monetary examples does come into a good direction for us to develop this grant.
Well, I like the fact that we're doing some, you know, electrical and roof and some of these things. Typically, I see these things focused on the exterior, because that's kind of where you're trying to go for the most part. You're trying to upgrade the exterior. That's what people are seeing, and you're dumping tax dollars and stuff into it. I think it plays a little bit better.
Well, what I wanted to add another perspective is, you know, floodplain requirements that we have. If you do a certain amount of improvements, you'll be required to do, if it's more than 50% of the structure, you'll be required to elevate your house by 2 feet. And that's the floodplain requirements that we have for houses that are located in that flood zone. And without us identifying this, that could fall into that. And that's a really expensive grant. That's a really expensive kind of project that doesn't necessarily grant itself too. So just kind of the intention of the grant, what are we really looking for? Is it small repairs and external repairs, or just a general repair of the house, and they can get a grant to contribute to some repairs?
I guess I would kind of, you know, it depends on how big of an area you're doing, how many properties could potentially be involved. I think that that's gonna kind of back you into a number, because let's say if you've got 500 properties involved, you're probably only gonna be able to go to maybe $5,000 or something. Probably gonna have a smaller max if you're offering it to more people.
Well, again,
Yeah.
what this is saying too is you're also saying evaluate developing. So you're not actually developing it right now. You're just making an evaluation of it. I think to kind of reiterate Rainey's point, for us as a staff to begin an evaluation of it, knowing or having some sort of calibrated range as far as what type of things we're looking at. We're not talking necessarily about seismic retrofitting, which could run you $50,000, $60,000 and really doesn't add any equity to the home. Are we talking about cosmetic? Are we talking about systemic, meaning, you know, electrical, water, mechanical, that type of stuff? Having those small examples in there, maybe taking out that very last sentence, but I think that second sentence there, or kind of giving some general example of it, is going to help us understand what the essence of that idea was.
Yeah, and I think I remember the conversation that we had as a housing committee about these were really focused on, well, if the city was even going to be doing this was focused on facade improvements, you know, exterior type things, and they were smaller scale. You know, the city's not paying for you to, you know, completely upgrade your house. It's more, you know, making sure that your house isn't falling over, or you're repairing the siding on your home or something like that, just to, you know, create a better aesthetic for the city. And so I think, I'm trying to remember back to the conversation, but I think that we were intentional about the 2,000, 10,000, but, you know, if I do agree that it, you know, hamstrings the city a little bit by putting specific numbers in there. Maybe you just get more specific about the types of projects you're willing to fund, rather than a dollar amount.
Yeah.
And you'd have a cap on it, maybe at 5 or 10, and
Sure.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next slide, Rainey, or are you good?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, Chair Stephenson, you were saying about the cap to take out the range, you mean, in a maximum of $10,000, or just take that?
I would just take out the range and let the range figure itself out, because the amount is going to be determined on how many properties are involved.
Well, you could also get into multiple funding sources where the federal government pays for some, a grant pays for some, the state pays for some, homeowner pays for some. And then how do you determine
Okay.
what that total should be?
That's a tough one.
So a suggestion could be to insert just in the beginning of that paragraph, evaluate developing a small grant program and let staff come back to you with a proposal on what that grant program is going to look like.
Have you seen many that involve roof and electrical and mechanical and things?
Certainly roof and to a degree electrical, yeah.
Okay. Most of them I've seen have just been exteriors.
I mean, you have facade grant programs certainly for commercial and even some for residential, but increasingly with electrical especially, you're starting to see it.
Okay.
Well, and a lot of the older homes have the fuse boxes and have to upgrade to the circuit breaker type box, which is
That's right.
expensive.
You almost always see that, and actually utility providers will often kick in some cash for that kind of upgrade too.
Right.
This presentation, this bullet is from the exercise, and in the deeper part of the strategy, it goes a little bit further and say the program could include inspection of the completed rehabilitation work to ensure that the work was completed to building standards.
Well, I think you're even better than that, is when you're doing a grant, right? You would chip in, let's say, 5,000. That's a max. After the applicant has submitted several bids. You look at it and you say, okay, this is a viable project. If it's done according to the standards that you've set, you write a check back to the applicant. If not, you don't.
Yeah, I mean, that gets into the details of the grant, so I mean. So
We can certainly include that in the proposal, in the grant that we bring to you. Okay, I guess we can move to the slide. This is another grant discussion, 3C. That is a continuation of policy 3. It's similar, but it's for significant one, and that's why that conversation of the 10,000 happened in the previous policy.
I'm just trying to figure out how we would fund those. Would we have to, do we have to bond it?
Well, there's a couple of different avenues or vehicles you could take. Some cities create almost a unique development corporation. That's kind of an arm's length entity. And that may have borrowing capacity beyond what the city has and would rely on the city's full faith and credit, kind of like an urban renewal agency, but for the specific use of housing rehabilitation. That's one potential avenue. There's probably others that I'm sure Pamela and Ethan are far more versed in, but that might be one way you can look at it. And I think that what this particular policy item talks about is really targeting, as I mentioned earlier, some of our older residential homes that are hitting 40, 50 years old. Because, you know, there's affordable housing by design or by covenant, and then there's affordable housing by age.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing, frankly, in a lot of these older homes is conditions that have really deteriorated over time, which has made the housing naturally affordable, but may not necessarily keep the housing stock in the best health, if you will, as far as adjacent property values, but just the property value of the home itself. And some folks who are in there, whether they be renters or even owners, may not necessarily have the financial means to make those improvements necessary so that they can even see a return on equity on their home. So I think this was a thought that, or an acknowledgement that affordability is more than just a government subsidized program. It also talks about general affordability for our overall housing stock.
Right. Do we have that many that would be connecting to sewer?
I mean, these are just examples, I think, that were
Okay.
cobbled together by Eco Northwest. I don't know if there would be, in our specific case, that's the case.
So this is like a two-tier.
Right.
You mean
Yeah.
between 3.3B and C?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was just going to jump in to say, typically these are programs that are probably funded by new development, either through some sort of like a skim of SDCs or some sort of building permit fees, you know, set up an affordable housing trust fund or some sort of fund that's paid through, you know, some pool of money that you could draw from that's collected from new development, but not always the case, but that's the typical scenario.
Right, but we're talking about having to lower some of our fees to get the developments we want.
Right. Yeah, policy trade-off for
This,
sure.
we're gonna be raising them, we're gonna raise them so we can lower them.
Yep.
We'll need to
Any
have a big
comments on this?
funding.
A big what?
30,000 will be a lot.
Well, yeah,
Mhm.
it's something.
Mr. Chair, again, if I can, and I know I made my opinion very clear before, but I would like to emphasize again that in this moment of this policy, I don't think that we really have to start to make assumption about at this moment, in this moment right now, this evening, what the loan are going to be used for, if it's going to be for electrical or for painting outside or fixing it. And I don't think there is value at all about being too specific about these ranges of these grants. What I think we should do, and I agree with the staff, is that we should give them the opportunity to think about a way to, in a different stage, not at this level of policy, what kind of parameters to use in order to define the grant a little bit better, and could be for, eventually might come back to a value of money. I would prefer not. Maybe the scope of the work for small residential, roof and electrical, whatever it might be. But I don't think we should consume too much time about trying to make an assumption on how many people might use it for sewer or for painting or for electrical. I think the value of this is that, and there is a noble value of it, and that there is a program. We are focusing, we are pushing, we are supporting a program of grants for rehabilitation. Do more than that, pigeonhole ourselves, limit our ability to be flexible. To me, is a dangerous road, and I don't think it's necessary at this point. Why would we say that the planning commission, when we write policy, when we write charter, why would we say that the planning commission has to meet exactly on the second Tuesday of the month or on the third Tuesday of the month after the first moon? Usually there is the charter allow flexibility. You will meet at least the charter, which is the equivalency there. You meet once a month, and then you start to, in a different location, say, let's go for the second Tuesday. But it doesn't have to be established in the policy. There is no reason in here to have the specifics about, one, the parameters, which is monetary value, and two, even the range. Again, but I'm just one voice, of course, so I'm going to be following all the majority of things, but I don't see any value whatsoever about making assumption and establish a monetary value. I will remove in both 3.3 B and 33C, the last sentence. There's no value whatsoever to me in my eye.
Well, I agree with you. You know, I cut it off after projects, but this is kind of for staff's benefit more than ours.
Well, it helps with our work plan as far as understanding, again, on the presumption that policy 3, the header policy gets included. So 3.3c, again, is not necessarily going to be memorialized in the comp plan. What it does do is it lets us know, okay, of the housing activities we have to do, what are the types of programs we're looking at, and what is, again, kind of a understood calibrated range. You know, and it's understood too, again, it's a strategy document, it's not necessarily gospel, it's not code, so we're not restricting ourselves entirely to that, but hopefully we're within the spirit of it. You know, much like we did with the previous one, if you want to take out that last sentence, okay, that's fine, we can still live with it, but I think the idea of considering both smaller scale grant support program versus a larger scale loan or grant program probably still holds merit, and I think we would need to make sure we understood the differentiation between the two through some of those examples you see here on the screen. I think that just helps from a staff perspective with our work plan.
A little differentiation.
I think it's warranted.
Okay, so I guess I would say like the larger ones could be a low interest loan.
Sure.
And part of that could be a grant. Where I'd look at the smaller one, that would all be a grant.
Potentially. Again, all we're saying here in both cases, we're saying evaluate. We're not saying
Do it.
do it. We're saying, let's see, can we do it?
Yeah.
So
I think if we can find the funding, it's a great program.
right, and that's going to be half the battle is securing it and looking at these resources and seeing the best vehicle for Troutdale.
Okay. All right. So you'd like that in there for the work plan? Yes.
Yeah, for the significant low interest loan, that does help us with the amount on it. There's
I won't fight
policy 4. Sorry?
I said I won't fight you.
Thank you. Help us help you. Policy 4 is to identify funding sources to support development, infrastructure, and housing affordability programs. There were policies within it, but the one that was marked as a priority, a high priority, is to continue working with Home Forward on development of affordable housing funded by the Metro Bond. I don't think there's any.
I wholeheartedly
intention.
support.
Not the presses.
We're working. This is a policy and action item we're working on. So we don't need to start it. We're continuing it. Okay. Any other comments about the priorities, or we can wrap that up for now?
Yep.
Okay, so the next steps of this project is kind of the timeline of adopting the work session that we just did with the comprehensive plan, and also adopting the strategy too as a whole. There's 2 timelines that we have here. Is of the less aggressive approach. So we will have a rent burden meeting in December, and then looking into the full comprehensive plan amendment in March 21, and then April 2021 will be the city council hearing, and then adopting the strategy and including the priorities within that in May here. The other option is to do the aggressive route and close this out while it's still fresh in our head. and in our discussion is having it into your planning commission hearing in November 2020, and then having that into the city council meeting as a type application, goal 10 in December. And then by early 2021, the council adopt a strategy.
I mean, there's pros and cons to both.
Mhm.
Yes,
The
there
less
are.
aggressive gives us a little bit more time just to kind of see what happens in Salem too.
And what happens in November with, local election too.
Right.
That's one of your
Right.
considerations as well.
Local elections, the other thing is where we start landing with COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually think more information would be better.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. I like the less aggressive approach.
One thing that you see on this list here too, which historically the CAC has been the one to host it, this rent burden meeting in early December 2020. If you are in fact going to go with the less aggressive approach, which again, that's really the consensus of this group, we would encourage that the Planning Commission, but also still these ad hoc members on the Housing Committee really be the ones who serve as hosts to that discussion. Because it could have direct impact with how you think about the strategy in that new year. While certainly housing is more than just rental affordability, it does play a big role, and as several of you have mentioned here, it is a problem that we face as a community. And for those of you who have been to that meeting before, there's some pretty interesting testimony that you hear from people, and I think it's worthwhile. So if you are going to do that, understand then that the citywide expectation would be that this group is the one who shepherds that meeting.
I will say this, it's better than you think it is. And I would also say, I think the Housing Committee should handle this meeting. This is in our wheelhouse. This is what we've been working on. We should be listening to the community. We should be handling that meeting in December.
Has the city already held its open house for 2020?
No.
Okay.
No, historically it's been a December meeting. We had starting in 18 and 19. Again, this is from a state mandate from state law to do it, but you're familiar with that, I know.
Very well attended, though.
Well, I'm certainly more than willing to participate. And my only question about attendance is early December is kind of in the middle of two big holidays. And I was just curious why maybe it couldn't be more like mid-December, or excuse me, mid-November, so that, or early November, so that it's not so in the middle of the crazy holiday season.
Well, you could, but you've got, okay, early November, you've got the election. Then you've got, after the election, you got people protesting. Then you got Thanksgiving. Then you kind of go into the Christmas season. I don't know that there is a good time. I agree with you. You know, you could do it that way, but I don't know that there's really a good time. And this year we're going to be doing everything over Zoom anyhow. You're going to be cutting the turkey and.
The first year I thought we did this in October, because I remember I was fresh out of shoulder surgery. I don't think it was in December.
Last year was in December.
Yeah, it was.
Actually, I have a calendar, I can pull it up.
We could try to do it in October.
We could. I think if you wanted to do it in October, then while we have this captive audience here, we would ask for a date in October. But October is going to be a busy month for our department. So, I mean, we can do it, but I'd rather set a date tonight than if you want to commit to an October date.
If it's October 2, we would need to start start meeting advertisement. We usually would send out postcards and outreach materials about a month, 6 weeks before the meeting. So we're kind of coming up in that if we do want to have it in October.
I would like to ask the staff, Lisa Narini, what is your preferred option here? Understanding exactly what entitles to do everything, the advertisement, understanding the volume of work you have right now, understanding what would you suggest would be the preferred option here, the date? We're gonna feel bad if you say March.
Next year.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have a calendar requirement. We do have to get it done by December, this particular meeting. As far as, you know, when we do the adoption of Goal 10, sure, the less aggressive option is fine to do it. But if we want to lead with that meeting, more time's great, but honestly,
so again, would early December work for you? Would be a good solution. Would early December be a good solution for you? That allow you enough time to feel comfortable, to be ready, and no rushing. Also, you better than anybody else understand the volume of work that you have in front of your desk right now on your desk. So would early December be okay?
Early December, I think there were 2 dates we were looking at potentially. One was December 1st, which is the first Tuesday, which normally would be a council reserve date, but probably won't be occurring this year. That is, you know, immediately after Thanksgiving though, and I'm not sure if everyone would be back home by that time.
Wednesday the 2nd.
Which is normally a CAC night, and this year, again, CAC has normally hosted it.
I think it was December 4th last year.
Yeah, we usually try, it was usually the CAC meeting in December is when we tried to have it. But the CAC has a couple of other items. Go ahead, Irini, I'm sorry.
Pardon me, Irini?
I was saying yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would think you want to do it that first week.
The other thought, and again, this is just spitballing here. Yeah, probably December 1st is probably our preferred date, y'all. I mean, we could do a late October date, but it would have to probably be, we'd be looking at a Monday probably, because maybe Monday, October 26th would be another option.
That's pretty quick.
I'll bring it up to CAC, see if they would like to do a joint meeting in some way, and have it, because they've been historically the one who's hosting it in the last 2 years anyways. So I did bring it up to for the meeting again this year to see if that's something that we could work out.
You could bring it up with them. I would say this, why don't we bring it up with CAC, but let's maybe pencil the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Does that work for the consensus of the group, December 1st?
Yep. Would this be a 6 p.m.?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pamela,
Yes, that would work for me.
that work? Okay, cool. Okay.
And then as far as kind of the consensus, the less aggressive appeared to be, at least from commentary, the preferred route. Did staff capture that correctly?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a suggestion on any comments on that less aggressive line? Either moving it up or moving some things down?
No, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys are done with it?
I do wanna let you, because it's gonna be 2021, that comprehensive plan amendment for the goal we will probably need to update the population, the census data that we get to. That might just be an update to what we had just talked about, because the data that we have, I just want to make sure at that time that we have the most current data.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
You guys?
Marie, are we good?
Is that it?
Do we need
Yep.
anything else?
Nope, we're
Okay.
good. Thank you so much for all your comments.
Pardon me?
She said thank you for your comments.
Okay. All right. Okay, with that, does anybody have anything for the good of the group? No?
Chair Stephenson, if I could.
Yes, sir.
This is Ethan. I just wanted to clarify the timeline a little bit for the housing needs analysis. So the city's already adopted the housing needs analysis in June, I think I saw. And
Correct.
what Arini had mentioned at the top of the meeting was that the city would not need to do a housing needs analysis until 2028. And so that is true. How that happens is because of House Bill 2003, which requires the city to update a H&A on a 6-year calendar. And it's kind of funky because the 2028 timing is 8 years after 2020 that we sit in today. However, the new rules for HB 2003 don't start until 2022. So a city that adopts an H&A between 2020 and 2022 kind of goes to the back of the line. So that's why you get the 2028 timeframe. So I just wanted to make that just abundantly clear so that everybody was clear on that. The 2028 means that, again, the city would need to adopt the next housing production strategy in 2034, 6 years after 2028. So that's the city of Troutdale's schedule on that 6-year cycle.
Okay.
Ethan, would
Thank
you
you.
mind clarifying about this strategy timeline for this meeting, if we're required to adopt a production timeline production?
Are you talking about the housing production strategy?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So yeah, the other requirement in House Bill 2003, which the city has effectively kicked down the road, which is great, is the housing production strategy, which is the requirement basically taking these policies in and putting some more concrete dates and ideas around those, and being very specific about which particular strategies the city is going to enlist to meet the housing production or the housing need that's identified in the H&A. So that's required to be adopted by the city council either through ordinance or other mechanism 1 year after the 2028 deadline. So it's not after the time you've adopted the H&A, it's 1 year after the deadline, which I know is very strange, but very specific. So the city would need to adopt the housing production strategy in 2029 by December 31st, basically, of that year. And so that's basically
Okay.
just a continuation. It's just a formalization of the process that we basically went through tonight. There's some more in-depth analysis, of course, that's going to be required by the state as part of that housing production strategy, but it's a very similar exercise.
But
Just
we
a little
don't
bit
do
more.
that until 2029.
Right, yep. So by adopting your H&A in June of this year, you've pushed that down the road.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, and I'm really glad you understand all this. And so,
Well, yeah, it's easy when you spend 40 hours a week working on it, and less so when you spend, 3 hours on a Wednesday.
And sort of timeline for is there a specific kind of deadline for the comprehensive plan amendment? And does our timeline meet kind of that expectation from the state?
So no timeline on adopting goal 10, the housing element of your comprehensive plan. Most likely, the city is going to, very similar again to the exercise we did tonight, include that adoption or those edits to a comprehensive plan as part of the HNA and as part of the housing production strategy. But it's not a requirement. There's no timeline or anything like that as part of that. It just makes sense for good land use practice to include that as part of this work. So.
okay. All right. Anyone else have anything? Okay, with that, I want to thank you all for spending so much time doing this evening, especially Ethan and Pamela. It's really tough reading. It's hard stuff. Thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate it, and we will see you next month.
Thank you all. I appreciate all of you also.
Thanks, guys.
And motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting of the Troutdale Housing Committee. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Nice evening. Good night.
Thank you, Pamela.